Cults and creativity are like fire and ice, complete opposites in terms of promoting wellness and supporting humanity. Creativity thrives on openness, exploration, and the freedom to play. It's fluid and life-giving, like a spark that grows into warmth and light. Cults, by contrast, freeze that spark. They demand conformity and rigid thinking. Where creativity celebrates diversity, cults demand uniformity. Where art invites many voices, cults silence all but one. Creativity nourishes the self. Cults erase identity. Understanding the power, the potential, and the process of creativity can both prevent and heal the harms of coercive control in high-demand groups, whether they're faith-based cults or other fringe movements. In this video, I'll show you why engaging in processes like art therapy can play a powerful role in recovery. My name is Renee. I'm a teacher and a mental health practitioner. And since losing my daughter to a destructive cult, I've become an advocate for cult awareness. I'm also a qualified art therapist, and I've made this channel because I want to share some of the simple creative activities that people healing from high control environments can do on their own as part of their recovery journey. Since this is my first video, I want to lay down a few of the basics, what art therapy is and what it isn't. To explain this, I'll use what I call the 3 Ps: power, potential, and process. The potential lies in what it makes possible. Art therapy doesn't require any specialised artistic talent. In fact, it works best when there's no pressure to create something perfect. Its potential is in opening play, imagination, and exploration, qualities that are often shut down in rigid or controlling environments. As Hines explains through the expressive therapies continuum, creative engagement can support cognitive, emotional, and sensory integration, helping people build resilience and reclaim their own voices. The process of art therapy. Art therapy is about the process, not the final product. This is where it differs from hobbies like colouring books or crafting. Those activities can be relaxing and even therapeutic. But art therapy involves a guided process of creative expression that overlaps with psychology, counselling, and mental health principles. The focus is on what emerges during the creation, the choices, the feelings, and insights that rise, rather than how a finished artwork looks. The power of art therapy. Art therapy is powerful because it gives people a non-verbal way to express experiences that are difficult or even impossible to put into words. Trauma, coercive control, and deeply personal struggles can sometimes overwhelm language. Art allows a person to symbolise and externalise these experiences safely. Images can hold meaning, emotion, and memory in a way that speech alone just cannot. It's important to acknowledge that art therapy can be surprisingly powerful. Engaging in creative work may stir up old wounds or bring forward difficult emotions. This is why, ideally, art therapy is done with a trained therapist. When used inappropriately, such as when non-art therapists try to add it on without prior knowledge, it has sometimes caused more harm than good. That said, many people don't have access to art therapy services, and making art has long been used as a form of self-healing. So you could say what I'm sort of doing here is trying to bridge a bit of that gap. I'm offering some guided creative exercises. But while doing them, please remember that this is not a replacement for individualised therapy. If you feel overwhelmed, it's important to seek professional help. So with that in mind, here's what art therapy is not. It's not about making a masterpiece or impressing anyone. Having said that, if you do have a background that involves learning art skills, you'll probably have difficulty letting go of perfection. My approach to this is to just not get too hung up about it either. In the very least, if you can give yourself permission to make bad or ugly art, then you'll get more out of the process in the long run. And if all you can do is stick figures, that's fine too. In order for art therapy to be effective, no judgment about art skills should be made. The next point I want to make is that art therapy is also not a mystical or spiritual experience. While art can feel deeply meaningful or even transcendent, art therapy is grounded in mental health principles, not magic. There is solid research in neuroscience showing why creative processes are effective in regulating emotion, supporting neuroplasticity, and helping people process trauma. And it's also not about decoding hidden symbols or unconscious codes. Contrary to some strands of psychoanalysis that once used art, the creator of the art is the ultimate judge of what it means and represents. A line, a shape, or a colour has no inherent meaning outside of the meaning that you, the creator, want to give it. Here are a few references about art therapy if you want to look into the science and the theories behind it. Here are 5 simple guidelines for doing art therapy at home. Number 1, create a safe space with no distractions. By setting aside a quiet, uninterrupted time and space for your art making, you'll get a lot more out of the process. You can go at your own pace and pause if anything feels overwhelming. Number 2, focus on the process and not the product, which I've already spoken about, so I won't go over again. Number 3, keep your artwork private unless it is safe to share. Avoid showing your work to people who may judge or misunderstand it. Their comments, even well-meaning, can sometimes be counterproductive. It's really common for people who don't understand the art therapy process to look at pieces and comment on how beautiful it looks or project their own meanings onto the images. It's best to avoid these things and only share with a trusted therapist or someone who understands that this is about expression, not aesthetics. If someone starts telling you what your artwork must mean, then it can shut down your creativity and superimpose meanings that don't fit your experience. So remember, your artwork is yours and the meaning comes from you and you alone. Number 4, reflect in writing or go to a therapist. After creating, take a few moments to write down your reflections. What was it like to make this? What feelings came up? What stands out for you? Writing helps deepen insight, and like the artwork, it's best to keep this private unless you feel safe sharing it. This reflection step is super important. It's where much of the power of art therapy comes from. In a therapeutic setting, art therapy is often described as a triangular dialogue between the creator, the artwork, and the therapist. This sets it apart from more traditional talk-based therapy, which tends to be linear, a back-and-forth dialogue. When you're working on your own, you could think of the creative process as stepping into that third corner of the triangle, almost like acting like your own counsellor. It gives you a way to step back, observe, and engage with your artwork as if it's speaking back to you. Number 5, respect your own boundaries. You're in control of the whole process. If strong emotions surface, ground yourself before continuing. Take deep breaths, go for a walk, or just simply set the work aside. Remember, you don't need to finish every piece. Stopping can also be part of the process. The first art therapy prompt in this series is creating a personalised front cover page and title for your art therapy journal. In order to do this, you will of course need a sketchbook. And if you have a fetish for stationery like I do, then this might be a slightly more complex process. This little one from Kmart costs just a couple of dollars, and the paper quality is surprisingly good. Because it's small, it's not very intimidating, and it's easy to carry around, so I'm going to keep this one as a little traveller. I also really like these A5 books, but today I'm going to use the larger A4 because I want to work with watercolour, and a bigger space is better for this medium. Really, you could use any sketchbook or even loose leaf paper. I do, however, recommend keeping all your creations together because that way it's easier to look back over what you've done and have a bit of a comparative reflection later down the track. You're also welcome to use whatever materials you feel like or have available: pencils, pastels, crayons, textures, or pens, or anything. You could also do collage or potato printing or whatever takes your fancy. It is totally up to you. This is not an instructional video, it's a guided process, and by me showing you my personal process, I hope to inspire. In regards to the decision-making process about what sketchbook and mediums to use, I understand that even these small decisions could be quite daunting for some people depending on how long they've been out of a cult or coercive control environment where strict rules and regulations were implemented. And maybe some people may even feel guilty about using resources or allowing themselves to imagine and play. A blank page can be very daunting. So if you're feeling like that, then just filling up the page with line, colours, shapes, or whatever you like is totally fine. For me personally, it's been a long time since I've done any art making. While in the past it was my refuge, a place where I could sit and contemplate life and marvel at all its mysteries, the past 5 years have been dominated by conflicts with my daughter's cult leader. And as a result of the stress and trauma, my art making has fallen by the wayside. So if I were to be totally honest, making these videos isn't only about me wanting to support cult victims, it's also motivation for me to reconnect with my inner self and carve out a little sanctuary for myself. I feel as though my creative spark has been frozen. And so I'm being quite gentle with myself as I slowly remember what it's like to be playful. Watercolours are really good for play, and since I began by wetting my page, I have very little control over how it will finish up. By just putting blobs of paint on the page, I can just let them do their own thing without trying to control the outcome. It's been so long since I've used these, I can't even remember what half the colours look like. So I'm just picking a few at random and hoping it all comes together. I remember one of these was a purple, which I really liked. And so I'm hoping I can find that, but all the paints look so dark and similar when they're in the tray. So that one? No, not that one. Maybe this one? Aha, here it is. I really love this purple. While this activity may not seem like hardcore art therapy, in contrast to being in a controlling group where all your decisions are made for you, confronting the micro decisions of choosing a book, deciding what to put on a blank page, and what title to give it can be quite daunting. I think that's why I like this technique of wet on wet watercolour so much, because it doesn't allow for control and decision making is minimalised. The colours flow into each other without me having to make them do anything. And just about any selection of colour will look good. Wanting the cover to have some sort of visual appeal feels important to me right now because I want to feel good every time I open this book and see it. Now time to let it dry. While that's happening, I'd like to introduce you to Granny Garnet. She's a persona I've created that embodies both narrative therapy and creative expression. She is drama and art therapy, a character that delights my inner child's love of fairy tales and my adult's intellectualization of ye-old wisdom reflected in the story of Little Red Riding Hood. Many people describe cult leaders as being wolves in sheep's clothing. But to me, the story of a young girl who was led off the path by the promise of pretty flowers by a wolf who would later disguise himself as her grandmother encapsulates the process of love bombing and deceptive tactics that we today associate with coercion and high control groups in a much more descriptive and memorable manner. Some people think the story of Little Red Riding Hood ends with the woodsman wandering past the grandmother's cottage and rescuing the victims by cutting open the wolf's stomach. However, this is not the final end. It is recorded that Little Red Cap and her grandmother were visited by a wolf a second time, but being all the wiser, they defended themselves and tricked the wolf with the smell of sausages. This reminds me that people who leave cults also become wiser and better at spotting wolves who want to devour them. Granny Garnet is an extension of this legacy, a distant relative of Little Red, who carries the wisdom of the forest, the scars of past bulls, and the courage to speak about the shadows cast by cults and coercive control. Granny Garnet is a wise guide who bridges metaphor and real-world lessons. A voice unattached to time or place that can speak of dark and complicated themes through the power of imagination and joy.
Hello, darlings. Granny Garnet here, and I have a story to tell that is stitched from the golden thread. Once upon a time, deep in the heart of the forest, there was a young traveller who could not decide which path to take. Each trail looked the same, dark, tangled, and endless. So the traveller sat down on a mossy stone and sighed. I'm lost. But just then, a tiny bird swooped down, carrying a single thread of a golden light in its beak. The bird dropped it at the traveller's feet, and when they picked it up, the thread shimmered and sparkled. What do I do with this? The traveller wondered. But as they began to weave the golden thread through the air, stitch by stitch, loop by loop, the darkness started to part. Colours began to return to the forest. Green leaves, silver streams, and blossoms of every shade. And the traveller realised that even in the darkest woods, a spark of creativity could light the way home. So remember, my dears, whenever you feel lost, begin to weave, and the forest will bloom again.
I've decided to name my journal Freedom Through Art because I want it to reflect my journey through the forest of dealing with cults. You're welcome to use that title too, or you can come up with something else more personal. Granny Garnet's story has inspired me to add a spindle of golden thread and weave it across my page. Now it's time to do the reflection and be my own therapist. I have another sketchbook that I picked up for only $3 at a thrift shop. The paper's quite thin, which means it's not great for art making, but it is perfect for journaling. I've had many journals over the years, many of which have been messy rants of inner dialogue. But since I'm sharing this one with the public, I'm going to put in a bit more effort to its appearance. Life is stitched together with small choices. Today, I chose to open a book, reach for colours, move my brush. These may seem insignificant, but together they shape the story of my life. When living under domination and control, whether from a person, a group, or even our own fears, choices shrink. Our creativity becomes boxed in. But when we give ourselves permission to play, with colour, with words, with ideas, we slowly reclaim that freedom. It doesn't matter if the page turns out beautiful, messy, or nothing like as planned. What matters is daring to choose, daring to create. And with each little act of creation I've done today, I remember I am more than what has happened to me. I am a creator. I am free. So this wraps up the first of my videos on self-guided art therapy. I hope I have inspired others to explore their own creativity and that you'll join me to continue the golden thread in future videos. The activities and opinions expressed in this video are for educational purposes only, but are not a substitute for professional therapy. If any of the topics covered stirred up strong emotions, please seek professional guidance.